In the winter of 1968, Northern California was quiet. Suburban streets were calm. Lovers parked along dark hillsides, overlooking the city lights. It felt like a different America, slower, safer, more innocent. But that illusion was about to fracture. On December 20th, 1968, two teenagers parked on a remote road near Vallejo were shot without warning. There was no robbery, no clear motive, just sudden violence in the dark. Police initially believed it was an isolated tragedy. They were wrong. Months later, on July 4th, 1969, another young couple was attacked in a parked car. This time, the male victim survived long enough to describe the shooter, a white male, stocky build, calm, methodical. It was after this attack that the killer did something unprecedented. He called the police himself. He calmly reported the crime and claimed responsibility for the earlier double murder. His voice was steady, emotionless, almost proud. Then the letters began. In late July 1969, 3 nearly identical letters arrived at major newspapers in Northern California, including the San Francisco Chronicle. Each contained a portion of a cryptogram, a cipher made up of strange symbols. The writer demanded the cipher be printed on the front page, or he would go on a killing rampage. He signed the letters with a name the world would never forget: Zodiac. The San Francisco media exploded with fear. Who was this man? How did he know details only the killer could know? The ciphers were eventually decoded by a schoolteacher and his wife. The message read like the manifesto of a man detached from humanity. He claimed killing was more thrilling than hunting animals. He believed his victims would serve him in the afterlife. It wasn't just murder, it was performance. The Zodiac Killer wasn't hiding from attention. He craved it. On September 27, 1969, a young couple relaxing by a lake was approached by a hooded figure wearing an executioner-style mask marked with a crosshair symbol. He tied them up. He stabbed them repeatedly. Before leaving, he calmly walked to their car and wrote on the door, listing previous attacks and marking the date. One victim survived long enough to recount the horror. The image of that mask would haunt investigators for decades. 2 weeks later, in October, a taxi driver was shot in the head in the upscale Presidio Heights neighborhood of San Francisco. Witnesses saw a white man wiping down the cab before walking away. Police almost stopped him, but a radio dispatch mistakenly described the suspect as black. Officers passed right by him. A simple communication error may have allowed one of America's most infamous killers to slip into the night. From that moment forward, the Zodiac became something larger than a suspect. He became a myth. He continued sending letters, taunting police, mocking investigators, threatening school buses. In one letter, he claimed responsibility for 37 murders. Authorities could only definitively link him to 5, but uncertainty became his weapon. Fear spread beyond the crime scenes. Parents kept children home from school. Couples stopped parking at night. The symbol of the crosshair became synonymous with dread, and then he vanished. No confirmed killings after 1969. Letters slowed. The case went cold. Detectives chased suspects for decades. Hundreds of names surfaced. Thousands of tips poured in. Yet no one was ever charged. The Zodiac Killer became a ghost. But ghosts leave traces. In the decades that followed, investigators preserved what little physical evidence they had: letters, envelopes, stamps, tiny fragments of saliva, partial fingerprints, handwriting samples. At the time, forensic science was limited. DNA testing did not yet exist. Genetic genealogy was science fiction. Detectives relied on witness descriptions and gut instinct, and those instincts often pointed to one man, Arthur Lee Allen. Allen lived in Vallejo. He wore a Zodiac-style watch with the same crosshair symbol. He had a criminal history. He made disturbing statements to acquaintances. Police searched his home multiple times, but fingerprints didn't match. Handwriting didn't match conclusively, and DNA testing decades later reportedly failed to link him to the letters. Was Allen a convenient suspect, or a near miss? The deeper investigators looked, the more the case fractured. Every suspect had inconsistencies. Every theory collapsed under scrutiny. Then came the era of modern forensics. In 2018, the world watched as the Golden State Killer was identified using genetic genealogy, a technique that compares crime scene DNA to public ancestry databases. A distant relative can be enough to build a family tree and narrow down a suspect. Cold cases that sat untouched for 40 years were suddenly solvable, and the question resurfaced: what if the Zodiac left behind usable DNA? Authorities had preserved envelopes and stamps from the original letters, but contamination was a concern. Multiple lab tests over the years produced partial profiles, some inconclusive, some disputed. The biggest challenge was certainty. Were investigators even testing the killer's DNA, or that of a postal worker, or a journalist who handled the letter? If a usable profile exists, genetic genealogy could potentially identify him, even if he died decades ago. But there's a darker possibility. What if the Zodiac never licked those stamps? What if he used gloves, or applied stamps with water? What if the DNA trail leads nowhere because he anticipated forensic science before it existed? This is what makes the Zodiac different. He studied police behavior, he read the newspapers, he adapted, he manipulated. He turned an investigation into a spectacle. And as the years passed, he transformed into legend. Books were written, films were made, amateur sleuth communities flourished online. Cipher enthusiasts obsessed over unsolved codes. Every few years, a new suspect would trend. Every few years, hope would rise. And every few years, it would collapse. But something changed recently. Advancements in DNA sequencing now allow labs to extract profiles from smaller and more degraded samples than ever before. Techniques like touch DNA and next-generation sequencing can sometimes recover information previously thought impossible to retrieve. Cold cases across the United States are falling one by one, which raises the inevitable question: if the Zodiac were alive today, would he be caught within weeks? Or was he careful enough to outsmart science itself? In Part 2, we examine the DNA evidence, the controversy surrounding testing methods, the most credible suspects, and the unsettling possibility that the Zodiac may have died peacefully, never knowing how close modern science came to exposing him. Because in the end, this isn't just about a killer. It's about whether technology can finally defeat a ghost. Subscribe Criminal Verse, where every crime hides a story. For over half a century, one name has haunted the American psyche: the Zodiac Killer. This phantom terrorized Northern California in the late 1960s, claiming at least 5 lives, though he boasted of many more. His reign of terror wasn't just about the brutal attacks. It was a twisted game played out in the public eye. He taunted police and the press with a series of chilling letters and complex ciphers, creating a mystery that has endured for decades. But now, with the dawn of new technology, are we finally on the verge of unmasking this ghost? The core of the Zodiac case lies in the evidence he left behind, or rather, the lack of it. In an era before modern forensics, crime scene investigation was a different world. Fingerprints were smudged, and the concept of DNA was still science fiction. The killer was meticulous, often wearing gloves, leaving investigators with very little to go on. He sent letters, some sealed with saliva, offering a tantalizing hope for future investigators. For years, these traces of DNA were too degraded or contaminated to be useful. Early attempts to extract a profile failed, leaving the identity of the Zodiac as elusive as ever. It was a constant cycle of hope and frustration. But then came a revolution: genetic genealogy. This groundbreaking technique, famous for cracking the Golden State Killer case, involves taking a degraded DNA sample, building a genetic profile, and uploading it to public genealogy databases. Investigators can then find distant relatives of the suspect and build a family tree, slowly but surely closing in on their target. For the Zodiac case, this felt like the key that could finally unlock the mystery. Forensic scientists have been working tirelessly, trying to piece together a viable DNA profile from the stamps and envelopes the Zodiac licked. It's an incredibly delicate process, a race against time, as the evidence continues to degrade. Over the years, the list of suspects has been long and varied, but two names consistently rise to the top. First, there's Arthur Lee Allen. He was the prime suspect for decades. He lived near one of the crime scenes, owned a watch with the Zodiac brand name, and reportedly made incriminating statements. Police searched his home multiple times, but the evidence was always circumstantial. His handwriting didn't match the letters, his fingerprints weren't a match, and a DNA sample taken from him didn't connect him to the case. Despite the strong suspicion, the physical evidence just wasn't there. More recently, a new name has emerged, brought to light by a team of independent investigators, Gary Francis, Post. This group claims Post is the Zodiac, citing a pattern of scars on his forehead that they say matches a police sketch. They also point to a web of circumstantial evidence linking him to the crimes. However, law enforcement agencies like the FBI have stated that the case remains unsolved and have not officially named Post as a suspect. The evidence presented by the independent group is compelling to some, but it hasn't met the high legal standard required to definitively close the case. The debate rages on, adding another layer of complexity to the already tangled web. And then there are the ciphers. The Zodiac wasn't just a killer. He was a cryptographer who craved attention. He sent for coded messages, daring anyone to uncover his identity. The most famous, the 408-symbol cipher, was cracked by a schoolteacher and his wife within a week of its publication. But his most notorious puzzle, the 340-character cipher, remained unsolved for 51 years. It was a holy grail for codebreakers around the world. Finally, in 2020, a team of private citizens from 3 different countries managed to crack it. The message was just as chilling as the first. I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber, because it will send me to paradise all the sooner. It was another taunt from the grave, offering no clues to his identity. One cipher still remains unsolved to this day. So, where does that leave us? The Zodiac Killer case is a stark reminder of the limitations of old-school detective work, and a shining example of the incredible potential of modern science. The hunt for the Zodiac is a race against the clock. Key witnesses and suspects have passed away, and the physical evidence is fading. Yet, with every advancement in DNA technology, there's a renewed sense of hope. Will genetic genealogy finally give a name to the faceless killer who has haunted us for so long? Or will the Zodiac's true identity remain one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries? The final chapter has yet to be written. Thanks for watching. If you're fascinated by true crime and unsolved mysteries, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next investigation.